So as we conclude today, the isms, I think, are just really important because we're watching so much of it around the world today, and we see so much of it take place. And what does it really mean? And again, as I look at the world, I just see it being set up for some really interesting times going forward. And the way that the world is moving is different than I've ever seen it in my life, because it's not just a little one-off here or there. Our country itself has changed enormously in the last 15 to 20 years, like I had never expected to see. And yet here we are. So when we get into the isms, we looked at globalism last week, or the last study, going through Isaiah on Monday. And so globalization, again, is just that idea that there are people who think that every decision should be made with everyone involved. We live on a planet of 8 billion people. We have great privilege here living in this country, so we should never make every decision based on us, but on the whole world, as though we could do something about 8 billion people with a population of about 330 million. So there's no way that we're going to fix the problems of the world. So you'll have people that love to debate that they hate the idea of nationalists. So that's one. You can find extremists in that group. You can find extremists in the other. And here's the interesting thing. A nationalist would be a person who says, well, wait a minute, every decision that we make should be, first of all, made for our citizens, thinking about it in a governmental sense. So as far as the government is concerned, because the isms are what we're talking about, and the world is being shaped. And again, when the Lord returns, he's going to be returning to a world that is going to be in some kind of a condition. Somehow, some way, the world is going to be in whatever condition it is when he returns. So when we see that the trends happening in a global sense, it is intriguing. If the Lord was to return right now, this is what it would look like. So there is a big debate, even in our own country, about should the decisions that we make be made with our citizens in mind or with others in mind. That's the big decision between globalism and nationalism, and then there's all the pieces in between because of compassion and for all the other reasons that one person might grab one camp or the other. But as far as nationalism is concerned, again, also in a earthly or in a global sense, you have, again, people who are very nationalistic. They are concerned about the well-being of their individual populations within that country. It's not exclusive to the United States. And you could go country by country and you could put them in their categories. What are they? Are they a monarchy? Are they a globalist group of people who really are kind of just every decision is made with the globe in mind? Or are they isolationists? Sometimes nationalists are also referred to as isolationists. But interestingly enough, the Nazi Party was National Socialists. And so their whole thing was Mother Germany, the motherland. And so that was their whole operating platform. But again, it was just a ruse to give a madman like Hitler the desire of conquest. So it wasn't just about what's best for us as Germans, it was about domination of the world. That's where he was headed with the whole thing. Nationalism doesn't have to be a horrible thing. You can basically say, look, we have dealings with everybody on the planet, that's fine, but we are concerned about us before anyone else because our obligation is to us and to our citizens. So you could look at Israel in the ancient times was very nationalistic. It was also intended to be a theocracy. It was supposed to be God-governed people, and they had their things in common, but they lived under a common law. And anybody who would want to come in from the outside had to live according to that law. So you could say, I wouldn't call them isolationists because they had commerce with everyone. You can look at that. During the time of David and the time of Solomon, they were very commercial. They were very big in trade and all the rest, but they were still the children of Israel. They were of the 12 tribes. They were the sons of Jacob. So there's no question about that. Defined border, they were his people, they were a theocracy, all of those kind of things. But they were pretty nationalistic, as we might think of it in the terms of that. But how does that end up playing in a world, and how does it end up playing within that particular nation? So when we get into what I'll talk about on Monday, which is socialism, that, in the framework of what kind of a country are we? Are we supposed to be nationalists? Should we be globalists? And we have people in our country that argue strenuously for both sides of that. And again, then they start to put in policy. And we talked about that on Monday. So a nationalist would have the kind of policy pretty much like what we see coming out of our current administration. And it's very much different from the previous two administrations under Obama and Biden, were much more globalist. And in some cases, like with Obama, was very apologetic for everything that we have done and went and tried to be the real global citizen kind of a thing. Interestingly enough, the complete opposite end of that has been Trump. It's like, yeah, I'll go everywhere else, but every decision we're going to make is more for our people. And we've been serving the world enough, and it's run up debt. So that's what you usually hear argued by his side of that. So the idea of nationalism outside of even our particular country, because you'll find other very national-minded countries around the world, interestingly enough, a lot of them are moving more in that direction because they've dabbled and experimented on the other end of it, and it's really cost them. So there are the other isms that also get involved, and we'll look at that coming Monday, the next one of these that we look at. But nationalism is kind of an interesting thing, and we can throw in this other part of it. So very briefly, I will address, because it's become a big deal, and it's known as Christian nationalism. So there's one element that goes even further if you throw in the term Christian, and that is the people that say, well, the nation should be governed by Christians and by Christian doctrine and by Christian values and by Christian this, that, and the other thing. So that would be, if it's America, America first, and America should be run by Christian laws, by Christian leaders, by Christian this, that, and the other thing. Of course, I think it's crazy. I wouldn't want to live under a theocracy when any man is involved with it. We see what happens when that occurs. So man would goof that up even if God would allow it. But our government was never intended to be a Christian nationalist group anyway. But when I look at the way that our country has operated and is currently operating, people can have their desire one way or the other, but the idea that you have your first and foremost responsibility to your own people, that would be considered nationalism. We are concerned about the nation, the one to which we belong. Before any other obligations, we take care of our own obligations first. It is really quite the opposite end of the spectrum from the globalist, who doesn't care first for the people of the country, but more for the globe. We're just one of 8 billion. We're not some exclusive group that we should be concerned about our own things. So interesting as we see this, because, and I'll go into this as we start to close this up in the coming weeks, what's going to fit when we start to see the end times of things, and better yet, what we see laid out for us in Revelation. How would nationalism fit with that? How would socialism fit with that? How would globalism fit with that? How would the isms fit if the church is gone and God begins to pour out his judgment upon those who dwell upon the earth? How would the isms of man deal with that kind of a scenario in preparation for what is the Antichrist and the system that will be put in, or that will be basically taken over when he shows up? It's an interesting question, and it's something that we probably don't spend enough time thinking about from all the different angles, though you hear people talk about these things all the time. So nationalism is kind of the second one. Globalism, nationalism, we will look at socialism this coming Monday, and then we'll start to see how all the pieces fit together and play the scenario, if you will, of what would it look like if the Antichrist was able to start putting everything in place starting tomorrow. And I think it hopefully will be a really interesting summary as we look back on it in all of it. And then seeing how it works out by some different groups that we see around the world today. And how are they going to implement? How do they see them implementing their own particular ideology? So I think you'll find that interesting as we wrap these whole things up. So any questions you have on any of these topics that we've been talking about today or in the other ones, or what we'll be talking about in the future, as far as Israel is concerned, or any of the Bible studies that we do, again, you can contact me through the ministry's website, and that's at oldpaththeology.net, and I look forward to hearing from you.